Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing. I'm sorry that the start of the proceedings has been delayed a little bit. It's because the lawyer representing the next witness has not been well, and we've had to make arrangements to enable him to attend remotely. He also asked for a couple of minutes to speak to his client to explain what was going on, which seemed to me a very reasonable request. So we're starting 10 minutes later for that reason. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Mr. Chairman, good morning. I now call Mr. Ben Bailey.
Good, thank you. Would you ask Mr. Bailey to come in, please?
Please can I ask you to do the witness affirmation text?
I do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give to be the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bailey. Good morning. Sit down and make yourself comfortable.
Good morning.
All right? Yes, Mr. Millett.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Bailey, good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, can I say thank you to you for coming here today and assisting us with our investigations. We're very grateful to you. If you have any difficulty understanding any of my questions, I'm happy to repeat the question or put the question in a different way. Can I also ask you, please, to keep your voice up, because you have a transcriber sitting to your right and she needs to get down your words clearly. And it also helps if for yes and no you say yes or no rather than nod or shake your head, because those don't go down on the transcript.
Okay, yeah.
We're going to take regular breaks during the day, but if you need a break at any other time, let us know and we can take a short break.
Yes.
Now, you've made a statement for the inquiry. Can I take you to it, please? It's
Yes.
in a folder in front of you on the desk there. And it'll also appear, as will the documents we're going to look at together, on the screen in front of you. This statement is dated the 9th of November 2018, and it's at HAR 3010060. Can I take you first to page 22 of that statement? There's a signature there underneath the statement of truth. Is that your signature?
That is.
Have you read this statement recently?
Yes.
And can you confirm for us that its contents are true?
Yes.
Have you discussed your statement today or the evidence that you're going to give with anybody before coming here today?
No.
Right. Now, I'm going to start with some questions about your background. Now, Ray Bailey, who was your father, and we'll call Ray for present purposes, told us that you are now 31. Is that right?
I'm 30.
You're 30, okay. Now, you'd worked, I think, on previous projects with Ray prior to your foundation degree in 2009. Is that right?
Yes.
And what about between 2009 and 2013?
Again, I think I'd worked for the company on and off in the sort of the university and school holidays
I see.
between up to that point.
And did you gain some experience as an office manager at Harley?
Yes.
And what about as a project coordinator?
Yes.
When did you gain experience as a project coordinator at Harley? Can you give me some idea of the dates?
That would probably have been, towards 2013. So if you take the time period 2009 to 2013, it would have been, maybe the second half of that period.
Yes, I see. And I think you graduated in 2013.
Correct.
Yes. Presumably in the summer of that year.
Yes.
Yes. And your degree from which you graduated in that year, was it business and management?
It was.
And the foundation degree you did, that was in engineering, I think you said. In the statement.
Yeah. Yes. It started off, I was going to do motorsport engineering, and that's what the foundation degree was for, but then I moved on to business and management
Right.
instead.
I see. Can we go to paragraph 5 of your statement on page 1 at the bottom there? And you detail there the courses that you covered.
Mm-hmm.
Did any of those courses cover fire safety in high-rise buildings?
They did not.
No. And you say that over at the top of page 2, and you list all the courses there. Looking at the first one, Health, Safety and Environment Test for Managers and Professionals, presumably that didn't cover fire safety.
No. Well, it may have covered general fire safety on a site, but not specifically, in buildings.
Yes. Were you ever given any training or do you have any qualifications in relation to fire safety in the construction of buildings?
No.
I'm going to turn to your role generally on the Grenfell Tower refurbishment. Now, your role on that was as project manager, wasn't it?
Correct.
And that started, am I right, in February 2015?
Yeah, it was around that period I became involved.
Now, between paragraphs 9 and 20 of your witness statement, we can see that you summarise your responsibilities as the Harley project manager. And without going into all of the detail there, would you be able to agree that, in short, as project manager, you were responsible for overseeing and managing all aspects of Harley's work on the Grenfell Tower project, at least on site?
I'd say my responsibilities were logistics and planning.
Right. Now, if we look at paragraph 6, you say there, in the first line, as a result, prior to graduating, I spent some time on Harley project sites. I also gained experience working as an office manager and project coordinator at Harley. And then you say, after I graduated, and that's 2013 as you've told us, I worked full-time as a site manager for Harley on a large refurbishment project at Merritt House, which involved the replacement of windows and installation of a curtain walling system. So your role there was as a site manager. That's what you say, is that correct?
That is correct. I think by the end of it, I was undertaking a part of a project manager's role as well.
Well, the reason I ask is because Ray Bailey said that you were a project manager on Merritt House. And the reference to that, for our purposes, is day 33 at page 133, line 8 and following. Is he right about that?
I think, yeah.
Well,
I was going to say partly through the job. I think my role morphed into that, yes.
right. So let's just see if I can get this a bit more clear in my mind. You started as a site manager at the Merritt House project, is that right?
Yes.
And at some stage you say your role morphed into project manager. Were you formally promoted to project manager?
I don't remember.
And is the sense that you gradually took on some tasks that a project manager would normally take on?
Yes.
It's that, is it?
Yes.
Well, could you give us an idea of the sorts of tasks?
Program management, liaising with the client, more valuation type activities.
Was any of those tasks related to to design?
No.
Was any of those tasks related to the selection of products or materials?
No.
Mr. Millett, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but my scrolling transcript is intermittently resetting. I say intermittently, about every 2 or 3 seconds.
Yes.
Can I just ask whether other people in the room seem to have the same problem? I think it's going to make it very difficult for people who are following it elsewhere if we can't sort this out.
Well, I'm sorry to say, Mr. Chairman, that so is mine, and I've only just noticed.
Yeah, you'd probably be better if we stopped for a minute or two and let you sort it out, would it? Yeah, I think we're going to do that.
We've had this problem before, and it
Well,
didn't take long.
it's very tiresome for those who are trying to make use of it. So,
It is.
Mr. Bailey, I'm sorry, we've got a bit of a hitch with our rolling transcript.
Yep.
So we're going to stop for a few minutes just to try and get it sorted out. I'm going to ask you to go back to the witness room with the usher while we do that. This is the first time you'll have left the room having started to give your evidence. So I need to ask you, I should remind you about this every time you go out, but I must ask you not to talk to anyone about your evidence or anything to do with it while you're out of the room.
Of course,
All right?
yeah.
Okay, would you like to go with the usher, please? And we'll get you back as soon as we can.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, well, we'll stop for as long as we need to, and perhaps someone could send us a word as soon as it's fixed.
Very good.
Good. Thank you very much. think we're back online and working, Mr. Millett. So
Yeah,
we'll
yes.
get Mr. Bailey back in. Yes, would you ask Mr. Bailey to come back, please? Well, I'm sorry about that, breaking your evidence, Mr. Bailey, but I think we're ready now to carry on. All right?
Good.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Bailey, how long were you involved in the Merit House project for? Can you give us an idea of dates?
I think I started on site on that job in beginning of 2014, I think.
And when did you come off site? Or when did you come out of that project, rather?
I think it's July 2015.
July 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So your role on the Merit House project overlapped, did it, with
Yeah.
your role on the Grenfell Tower project?
Yeah, so my involvement with Merit House in that time period was reducing weekly because we were finishing off on that job.
I see.
So it's the feely bits at the end that I was involved with.
So beginning of 2014 to July 2015, so 18 or 19 months or so. During that period, when did you start to take on the project manager aspects or tasks?
I don't remember clearly, but it could have been a third of the way through, half the way through.
Right, okay. So you can we summarize it this way, that by the time you started on the Grenfell Tower project in earnest in February 2015, you had been working on the Merit House project since early 2014, so about a year.
Yes.
Yes. So that would mean that a third of the way into that, you would have started doing project manager-like tasks, a third or halfway through that period. So that would be what, around about September, October, or maybe August,
yeah.
September 2014.
In the summer, yeah.
I mean, I don't want to put memory into your mind. You tell us what you remember.
That sounds reasonable.
All right. So if you took on project manager-like tasks in August or so, let's say, 2014, you'd had only a few months of carrying out such tasks by the time you started on the Grenfell Tower project in earnest in February 2015.
Yes.
Yes. Am I right that the role of Harley project manager, when you took it on, involved the coordination of all of the elements of the project which involved Harley, so far as Grenfell Tower is concerned?
When you say all of the...
Coordination of all of the elements of what Harley was supposed to do.
Well, I'd say my role was it's the managing of the program, managing of suppliers, and when I say program, I think that would involve directing the design in terms of what we need next to fulfil the program. So I don't think it's an overarching role.
Right. Did any part of that role include ensuring that the works for which you were responsible were being completed on time
Yes.
and to a high standard?
Yes.
And is it right that you would be, or were, the most senior Harley person regularly on the Grenfell Tower site?
Well, we would have visits from contracts managers and above regularly as well.
Yes, but you would be the most senior Harley person on site?
On a weekly basis, yes.
Yes. And on site, am I right that much of your role was devoted to ensuring that the facade works were progressing as planned?
Yes.
Yes. And did that mean that you would inspect the works carried out by Harley's installers, Osborne and Berry?
I snagged the works at various points.
Right.
As I said in my statement, I was at the request of Ryden.
So your inspection, is this right, your inspection responsibility was limited to snagging, or did it go further than snagging?
It was snagging.
Right. So you never checked the works as they were progressing to ensure compliance with standards or programme?
I think there's a difference between checking the works and snagging it. So when I wrote my statement, I refer to checking it. That is to see where we are in the programme.
Right.
And then a snag is at a point where that area is ready to be inspected.
Yes. Can you give us a rough idea? We'll come to the details later in your evidence, but just in general terms, can you give us an idea of how much checking inspection you did as opposed to snagging inspection?
It's hard to say now, years later, how often that happened, but it would have to have been weekly, bi-weekly, because you're trying to stick to a program which has week chunks at a time.
Yeah.
So it's a general overview of where we are that week or that 2-week period.
Right. Now, we've looked at your attendance on site, and you say weekly, and I think you've just said bi-weekly. Whether it's weekly or bi-weekly, for the moment, doesn't matter. But am I right in thinking that you are the only Harley employee who regularly attended site?
Well, as I said, on a weekly basis, yes.
Yes, but the only Harley. There was nobody else from Harley attending as regularly as you?
No.
No. Now, can we look at paragraph 31 of your statement, please? It's at page 10. And you say there that, and this is in answer to a question 4D, was the exterior of the building, including the cladding, insulation, fixings and windows, compliant with relevant building regulations, fire regulations, other legislation, British standards, including testing requirements, guidance and industry practice? So that's the question that you're being asked to answer. And you say, I was not involved in any compliance issues or decisions in relation to the project. Until the fire, I had no reason to question either the design or the materials being used. And I show you that. Can I then also show you, before I ask a question, page 13? And I want to show you paragraph 43 on page 13, which is in answer to the question, what decisions about the exterior of the building, i.e. cladding, insulation, fixing and windows were made, by whom and when? And you say, as explained above, I was not directly involved in the decision-making about the cladding, insulation or windows. Now, I've shown you those two extracts from your statement. Were you at all involved with any aspect of whether the design or the products complied with the building regulations?
Not that I remember.
What about industry standards? Such as, for example, the CWCT standard?
No.
No. Were you responsible in your role as project manager for making sure that those who were answerable to you made sure that the designs and products complied with the building regulations or industry standards?
No.
No. Do you accept that if you had become aware of a potential non-compliance with the building regulations or associated guidance, then in your role as a project manager, you would be duty-bound to ensure that those issues were adequately considered by those people within Harley who had appropriate expertise?
I hope so, yeah.
Yes, and if there was nobody within Harley with appropriate expertise, then specifically to raise it with those elsewhere in the contract group?
Yeah, I think we did.
We did, you say? All right. Well, we'll come to that. Do I take it from what you're telling us is that you didn't think you personally needed to understand the regulatory framework, so building regulations, approved document B, and relevant industry guidance, in order to carry out your role properly as project manager?
No.
You say no. I mean, I think you're agreeing with me that you didn't think it was necessary, just to be clear. All right. Do you agree that you, as project manager, couldn't properly inspect the installation of cavity barriers by Harley or Harley's subcontractors without knowing the requirements of approved document B to the building regulations, specifically paragraph 9?
My role as a project manager, as I understood it, wasn't to be inspecting such things.
You say wasn't to inspect such things. Do you mean not to inspect cavity barriers or not to inspect anything for compliance?
Yeah, correct.
Which is it of those two?
An inspection, in my mind, would be carried out by an independent third party. As I explained to you, I did snagging, which I see as a separate process to inspection.
Were you familiar with Part 9 or Section 9 of Approved Document B to the building regulations?
I'm not sure of the parts I was familiar with, but I had seen parts of Document B.
Yes, okay. Did you ever have any training prior to your involvement with the Grenfell Tower project which would help you understand Approved Document B or the building regulations or the industry guidance?
No.
Did Harley ever provide you with any formal or internal competency training to keep you up to date with industry codes of practice for the design and installation of cladding and windows?
Not at that time, no.
Not at that time. When it sounds as if you're telling us that it did, but later. Is that right?
No, that's not correct.
That's not right. So even today, Harley doesn't provide its employees with such training and competency awareness. Is that right?
Well, I think our awareness now is a lot greater.
Yes, but even now, is there any training?
I'd say it was in-house.
Right. I want to turn to ask you some questions about the role of assessing compliance with the building regulations and approved document B within Harley. First, was there, to your knowledge and recollection, anybody within Harley whose area of expertise and responsibility on this project, Grenfell, was to assess products and designs to make sure they did comply with the building regulations and associated guidance?
The design and technical manager,
And who was that?
Daniel Untitled Jones.
Right. And in relation to the Grenfell Tower project, did you ever think that it was your role to be considering fire performance of the materials and design of the facade for Grenfell?
No.
Whose role did you think that was?
Again, the design and technical manager.
And again, is that Daniel
Yes.
Untitled Jones?
Yes.
Can I show you some of his evidence? Can I ask you to be shown, please, day 37 at page 57? And I'd like to look with you together at line 4. And we're going to look down to line 14. At line 4, Miss Grange, who was examining Mr. Untitled Jones last week, asked him this question: whose job was it within Harley at the time of the Grenfell project to think about fire? Answer: there was nobody assigned across the whole company to do that role. Question: so just nobody was assigned to do it? No, each individual person would look after the responsibility on their project. Right, so does that mean it fell to Kevin Lamb to be thinking about fire on the Grenfell project? Answer: it would fall on Kevin and Ben. Question: Kevin and Ben, okay. And then she changes to a different topic. Now, I just want to ask you about the answer at line 13. It would fall on Kevin and Ben. Do you agree or do you disagree with Mr. Untitled Jones's assessment that thinking about fire on the Grenfell Tower project would fall on your shoulders?
I disagree on the basis of thinking about it in terms of compliance. Obviously, everyone's aware of it as an issue, but in terms of the compliance, I would disagree.
Right. When you say everyone's aware of it as an issue, can you be a little bit more specific? How was it your role at the time to think about fire in any respect?
I don't know what Dan means by that.
Right. Narrowing it down then, thinking about compliance with any aspect of the facade, design or products, with the regulatory regime relating to fire, do you agree or do you disagree with Mr. Anketell-Jones that fell on your shoulders?
I disagree.
Right. Are you able to explain why Daniel Anketell-Jones thought that you might have responsibility for thinking about fire in that sense?
No.
Did you consider yourself part of the design team on the Grenfell Tower project?
No.
Do you agree or do you disagree with Mr. Anketell-Jones's evidence that there was nobody assigned across the whole company, Harley, to do that role, perform that role?
I disagree.
You disagree. Again, are you able to explain how Mr. Anketell-Jones was able to say what he said in that respect?
His job title was design and technical manager. So I don't know.
What did you understand by his job title? What did you understand he was supposed to do?
Obviously, design manager, he would oversee the designers working on individual projects, and then technical, help them with the regulatory issues around such designs.
Right. You say design and technical manager. Do you remember what his formal job title was?
I believe that was it.
Right. And to your knowledge and your understanding at the time, did the job with that title extend to assessing compliance of the proposed products and materials for the Grenfell Tower project with applicable standards and industry guidance?
I think by the time it gets to a subcontract such as us, I think there is an expectation that compliance has already been considered, and Dan's role is just to further check that.
Yes. Can I then, in the light of that answer, ask you to look at the evidence of Ray Bailey, which is day 32, please. Day 32, page 17. And I'd like to go to line 21, if we can. And at line 21, I put to Ray Bailey, in Harley, was it the job of the technical manager to assess technical compliance of the products? Answer, yes. Now, just pausing there, do you agree with Ray Bailey's answer there?
Yes.
And the next question, I see, and at the time of the Grenfell Tower, that was Dan Anketell-Jones, was it? Answer, yes. It's just over the page. We see the answer at line 1. At page 18. It was, he says. Question, yes, I see. Do you agree with Ray Bailey's answer there?
Yes.
Can I now ask you to look, please, at what Mr. Anketell-Jones said when he was asked about this last week? Can I please ask for the transcript for day 35 at page 125 to be shown to the witness? Day 35, page 125. And I'd like to look together with you, Mr. Bailey, at line 15 and following. At line 15, you can see, Miss Grange asked Mr. Anketell-Jones this question. In his evidence last week, Mr. Ray Bailey indicated that at the time of the Grenfell project, you were the technical manager and that your job was to assess the technical compliance of products. That was at day 32, 1721. Do you agree with that? Were you the technical manager? Answer, no, I don't. I don't think I was made a technical manager until, I don't know, end of 2015, beginning of 2016. Perhaps because I hadn't had any training in that area yet. Question. So there was a distinction, was there, within Harley, and if we can go over the page, between the role of design manager, which you say you did perform, and the role of technical manager, which you say you didn't perform until later. Is that correct? Answer, that's correct. As design manager, was your job or part of your job to assess the technical compliance of products? Answer, no. Now, Mr. Bailey, can I ask you, at the time of the Grenfell Tower project, do you recall whether Mr. Anketell-Jones had been promoted to technical manager yet when you were involved?
I don't recall.
To your understanding, was it right that as a design manager, he would be required or he wouldn't be required to assess technical compliance of the products?
I think that's something you could expect as well.
What did you expect him to do in that respect?
Well, yeah, to assess the compliance.
Right. So, in a nutshell, you agree with Ray Bailey's evidence and disagree with Daniel Anketell-Jones's evidence.
Correct.
Thank you. Can I then ask you to look at Mr. Alberston's evidence? He gave evidence on day 35. And can the witness please be shown the transcript for day 35 at page 32? And at page 32, line 1, I asked Mr. Alberston this question. If Mark Harris or Ray Bailey told you to price a particular product, did you understand that it had been checked in order to make sure that it was suitable? Answer, yes, I would have done, yes. Who did you think would do that checking? Answer, either Ray Bailey or Daniel Anketell-Jones. Question, I see. So was it your expectation that anything in the NBS specification would be checked by Ray Bailey or Daniel Anketell-Jones for its suitability for application on this project? That's right, yes. And just ending the line of questioning there, would it, to the best of your recollection, have been the role of Ray Bailey to undertake a check for compliance?
I think in practice that was given to Dan to do.
Was there in Harley, at the time of your involvement in the Grenfell Tower project, a formal checking process whereby compliance with the building regulations and associated guidance would be undertaken?
I don't know, and I think I'll just say that at that point hadn't been involved in a job at that sort of early stage.
Which time are you talking about specifically in that answer?
So when it comes in for a tender, that's where it's,
I see. You became involved as project manager on Grenfell from February 2015. From that time onwards, let me ask the question, was there within Harley during that time a formal process for ensuring compliance with the building regulations and associated guidance?
So in my view, by that time I'd become involved in the project. And I'm talking about not the calendar date that you're talking about. I'm talking about the lifespan of the project.
Yeah.
When we finish it. When I get involved in that point, I'm not aware of any checklist. But that's
Thank you.
not to say it wasn't done before.
No, thank you. Now, can I ask you about the role of Kevin Lamb? At any time during your involvement, to the best of your recollection, did you or Ray Bailey tell Kevin Lamb to take the architect's drawings as read?
I didn't.
You didn't. Do you know whether Ray Bailey did?
I don't.
Do you remember whether either you or Ray Bailey told Kevin Lamb words to the effect of that he didn't need to check the architect's drawings to make sure they complied with the statutory guidance or industry standards?
I don't remember. Did
you or Ray Bailey ever tell him to assume that the architect had considered all questions of compliance?
I certainly didn't.
No. And do you know anything, from the best of your recollection, about whether whether Ray Bailey did?
I don't.
Right. If you had a question about compliance, who would you have raised that with within Harley?
Dan, I expect.
What about outside Harley?
The architect and building control. And when I say the architect and building control, that means through Ryden as well.
Right. If you saw the architect's drawings, were you sufficiently qualified or educated, to use a word previously used, to know whether a drawing was compliant with the building regulations and guidance or non-compliant?
I'd say not.
If you had seen something on the drawings which didn't look right, to use a colloquial expression, or didn't fit with what you'd heard, who would you raise that with?
On which drawing, sorry?
Well, if you had any drawings, if you'd received any drawings and you saw something that didn't look quite right or didn't fit with what you'd heard about products or design or anything like that, who would you raise that with?
I'd imagine Kevin to begin with, Dan,
Right.
internally.
To be a little bit more specific, and I think I know the answer, but I feel I ought to ask it anyway, were either you or Ray Bailey qualified to make a decision as to whether there should or shouldn't be cavity barriers around the windows on Grenfell?
I don't think I would have been able to make a judgment based on my knowledge at the time.
No. And what about Ray Bailey? Would he have been qualified to make or able to make such a judgment, do you think?
I don't know.
All right. Can I then turn to your experience on previous projects, and specifically the Merritt House project? Merritt House was in Colindale, wasn't it?
Yes.
In North London. Was that a building over 18 metres in height?
It was.
Do you know how high it was?
Best of my recollection, it was 10, 11, 12 stories.
Right. And did that project entail or involve a rain screen cladding refurbishment?
It was predominantly a curtain wall installation, but it did have smaller areas of rain screen cladding, yes.
And were those small areas of rain screen cladding above 18 metres or below solely below 18 metres?
They had elements above 80 metres, yes.
Above. Do you know what the rain screen cladding material or product was on that project?
It was a Luca bond.
It was a Luca bond.
Yeah.
So ACM Aluca bond.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you know whether the Aluca bond on that project was PE core or did it have a FR core?
I believe it was PE, although at the time I'd never heard of the core referred to it as anything.
Right.
So when I say I believe it was PE, that's what I know now.
I see. So does that tell us at the time of your involvement on the Merritt House project, there was simply no discussion or thought given to the nature of the core?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Do you know or do you remember whether any considerations were given by you or anybody else at Harley to the fire safety of the cladding on the Merritt House project?
I don't remember.
prior to the Grenfell Tower project, what was your experience of facade refurbishments using ACM? Was it limited to the Merit House project?
On a basis that I was involved with, it was Merit House, yes.
I see. And do you remember whether on Merit House the ACM was in a fixed panel form, rivets, or was it cassette?
It was face fixed.
It was face fixed. And do you remember what the insulation was?
That was Kingspan K15.
Kingspan K15. I just want to ask you one or two questions about previous cladding fires. Do you agree that as a project manager on a project for Harley being a specialist subcontractor, you had a responsibility to keep up to date with developments in the cladding industry generally?
I think in terms of my role, in terms of the management side of it, the health and safety side of it, for the guys on site, I did keep up to date with, those kind of matters, yes.
Were you, or did you keep up to date with any previous fires that had been linked to the use of ACM as a rain screen cladding material or product?
At that time, I wasn't aware of any fires linked to the rain screen.
Right. So I think I can take this quite shortly. You wouldn't have been aware of the historic fires in the UK, such as Knowsley Heights in 1991, or Garnet Court in Irvine in 1999?
No,
What about the fire at Lacknell House in Southwark in London?
I was not.
You weren't, right. What about the spate of fires in the high-rise buildings in the UAE in 2012 and 2013?
I was not.
No. And what about the fires at the Address Downtown Hotel or the Torch Residential Building in Dubai in 2015? No?
Again, I was not, no.
So had you ever heard of any ACM fires?
The only fire I was aware of that you could say had a ACM product on the building was the Taplow House. But that was my only awareness, but I wasn't aware of that as a cladding fire.
Right. And how had you become aware of the Taplow House fire?
Just my involvement with the company in my time when I worked there during the holidays, I think.
Right. I see. Did you read the abseil report or the other report relating to the fire?
Not at the time, no.
Not at the time. Not at the time of your involvement with Grenfell?
No.
Either. Right, I see. Let's turn then to look at some of your early involvement in Grenfell. Can I ask you to look at paragraph 7 of your statement, please? It's on page 2. And you say there that you first began to be copied into emails, this is in the third line, relating to Grenfell Tower from around September 2014, and then you became more actively involved in around February 2015. Can we look at some detail on that? Can we look first, please, at HAR 403830? Now, this is an email from Rob Maxwell to Kevin Lamb, copied to you on the 21st of January 2015. And he writes at the bottom, please copy in Ben on all correspondence from now on, as he is able to spend a lot more time on the project now. And the subject of that email, just to give you some context, is drawings. Do you remember what happened in December 2014, January 2015, which enabled you to become more involved in the Grenfell Tower project?
I think that must be in reference to the progress we had at Merit House.
I see. So Merit House was coming to an end, or your role in it was coming to an end, and you were able to spend more time on it.
Yeah, I remember certainly our site cabins, our site presence was removed from Merit House in January 2015, so you
I
know,
see.
things were starting to wind down there.
Right. Was there a Harley project manager on the Grenfell Tower project before you took on that role?
I believe Rob was performing that role.
Rob Maxwell, is that?
Yeah. Yes.
And when did he start acting as project manager for Harley on the Grenfell Tower project? Do you remember?
Not from any first-hand knowledge, but from what I've seen, it was from early days.
Right. When you came into the project, did you take any steps to familiarise yourself with the work done so far and the plans for it?
I think at some point we may have had a meeting where, you know, I'd been walked through some of the early stage drawings and the general idea of what we were being asked to do.
And who would that meeting have been with? Do you remember?
I don't remember an exact meeting, but
Right. Do you remember when it was?
not without guessing.
Did you actually have a formal handover from Rob Maxwell?
Not that I remember.
Did you review the NBS specification when you came into the project as project manager?
It's hard to say for me now if I reviewed that at the time, because I did read parts of the NBS spec that were sort of relating to our package of works
Right.
throughout the job. So I have a memory of parts of it, but I don't remember. You know, it's hard to remember which points in time that happened.
Did anybody provide you with a written job specification for project manager at Grenfell?
No.
Did anybody explain to you in detail what exactly you were supposed to do in that role?
I think they must have done, because I had the role in my head was planning, logistics, dealing with suppliers, things of that nature.
Did anybody spell that out to you? You say it was in your head, but how did it come into your head?
So again, I don't have a crystal clear memory of a sit down and that being explicitly said to me, but that's the role in my head.
Right.
So it may have happened. It may.
Who actually appointed you to the role of project manager?
It may have been Rob, actually.
Right. Rob,
Rob Maxwell as the contracts manager.
let me ask the question a slightly different way. Who actually made the ultimate decision within Harley that it would be you who would take over from Rob Maxwell as the project manager?
I don't know who definitely made the decision, but it's best of my recollection, it was Rob who told me, this is your next job.
Right.
So,
I see. And what did he do thereafter?
in terms of his involvement with the project, I think he took more of a back seat.
And from what you've said earlier, do we take it that he never said to you, and this is what you're going to do on the project? And it spell out to you precisely what tasks you had?
As I said, I don't have a clear recollection of that.
When you came into the project, you told us about the NBS spec. Did you read Harley's tender document dated the 29th of January 2014?
I believe I would have done, because I think I picked out some stuff later in the job from the budget sheet and pricing from it. So.
Did you read Harley's unsigned letter of intent and the appendices to it dated the 25th of July 2014?
I don't remember reading the letter of intent. With the appendices, there was lots of different appendices on it. So to say I didn't read the appendices, all of the appendices would be wrong. I did read some of them.
Okay, well, we'll look at that in a moment. Just in general terms, did you have any discussions, do you remember, with any of your colleagues at Harley about the general contractual obligations that Harley owed?
I don't think so.
What did you understand Harley's scope of works to be when you came into the project?
Well, broadly speaking, is to productionise the architect's intent for the rain screen, it ca- and carry that through to an installed product. Including the insulation and curtain wall areas of the building.
Right. When you say productionise the architect's intent for the rain screen, can you perhaps explain in a little bit more detail what productionising the architect's intent meant or involved?
So the architect, in my view, would design the overall facade of what they wanted, and as a design and as something that's aesthetically pleasing. What they don't do is break that down into parts that can be fabricated and manufactured, and that's really what I think our role comes into, is
Right.
take that design and intent into something that can be built.
And the transformation from intent to productionisation, to use your word, would involve further design, would it?
I think I'm not sure if it would involve developing the design. I think when you say further design, it's down to the components of it.
Right. In order to do your job as project manager on the Harley involvement in the Grenfell Tower project properly, you say you didn't read the letter of intent. Would it not have assisted you to have familiarised yourself with the letter of intent in order to know more precisely what Harley was supposed to do?
I actually think I derived a lot of my information, as we said, from you asked me about our tender document earlier on. What also we had from Bryden was a very detailed valuation sheet, and in that valuation sheet it detailed quite clearly the areas that we were expected to do. So from my view and what I was doing, I was using that a lot as reference
I see.
in terms of what we were expected to do.
When you say a valuation sheet,
Mm-hmm.
was that part of the request for the tender? Or was that part of the tender document that you saw?
I don't recall.
I see. Well, let's look at the letter of intent together and see how far we go with what you know, don't know, or knew and didn't know. Can we look at it? It's HAR 50120. Now, this is not actually dated the 25th of July 2014, but it came from Zach Maynard of Ryden to Harley on the 25th of July 2014 to Mark Harris. Have you seen this document before?
Before today, yes.
Yes. Do you remember looking at it during your role as project manager at Grenfell?
Again, I've seen it recently, and it's hard to say whether I'd seen it before that now.
Right. So that we're clear, do we take it that when you came into the project, you didn't actually make a specific effort to look at this document and understand exactly what it was that Harley was telling, or that Ryden was telling Harley what it wanted?
So I don't recall, but
Okay. Now, let's just look at it. Page 1, it sets out the authorised works under compliance. In fact, I'm sorry, just above compliance. Design of facade works, the authorised works, and then underneath that it says compliance. The authorised works must comply with the following. And then we can see a number of appendices referred to. You've got Appendix F and Appendix B, C, D, G, E down the page. Can we look first at Appendix D? Because you said earlier that you did look at some of the appendices. Yep. Appendix D is at HAR 50391, please. And can I ask you to look, first of all, at page 1, and is that something familiar to you, Appendix D, pre-contract interview?
it's not, no.
No. let's look at page 2, see how far we go. On page 2, look at clause 4, drawings, and under 4.2, subcontractor drawings, and you see that, NA, and then at the bottom there's a note. All drawings and specifications received by us, that's Ryden, will be commented upon and approved in principle only. And then it says this: the subcontractor remains fully responsible for the design, including relevant compliances, design and dimensional integration. Did you read or note that at the time?
I don't think so.
Did anybody tell you that Harley's responsibility to Ryden was that Harley would remain fully responsible for the design, including relevant compliances, design and dimensional integration?
It's not something I was familiar with.
Right. Do you accept that it was your job as project manager to manage the project so as to ensure that the design of the facade was compliant with what it says here, the relevant compliances, design and dimensional integration?
I don't think it was.
You don't think it was? Do you think that, or did you think that it was anybody's job in Harley to ensure that the design of the facade was compliant with the relevant compliances, design and dimensional integration?
No, my opinion that it was always the architect that performed that role.
Are you aware of any occasion when Harley told Ryden that despite what was written in this note, Harley would not remain either fully or at all responsible for the design, including relevant compliances, design and dimensional integration?
So could you say that again, please?
Yes. Are you aware, from your own experience and recollection, of any occasion when Harley told Ryden that despite what's written in the note here, Harley wouldn't remain responsible, either fully or at all, for the design, including relevant compliances, design and dimensional integration?
I don't know.
Right. Let's look at HAR 30396. This is the schedule of information described as Appendix F. And we can see at the top of the page it's described as envelope package schedule of information, and then there's a list of specifications and then a longer list of drawings. Just looking at it on the screen there, Mr. Bailey, are you familiar with this document?
I've seen the list of architect's drawings before. Whether it came from this document, I'm unsure.
Do you remember seeing this schedule at the time, or appendix?
What, the architect's drawings?
No, the Appendix F. Do you remember seeing Appendix F at the time?
I don't remember, no.
All right. As we can see, it incorporates a list of documents. Do you think you'd been provided with those documents?
The KCTMO Code of Conduct is something I remember being aware of or reading. That's the only one that I have a memory of.
Well, let's go to page 3. On there you can see that the appendix, the top of the page, penultimate entry, just above asbestos surveys, refers to something called LO 1212 Spec 001. Now that was a specification produced by Curtin's Consulting, and I'll show it to you. It's at ART 50914, please. And you can see that it's produced by Curtin's Consulting on the 1st of March 2013. We can see in the middle of the page the designation LO1212 Spec 001, and the title of this document is Specification, Structural Performance Specification for the Design, Supply and Application of Overcladding Systems to Grenfell Tower for Studio E. Just looking at that first page there, Mr. Bailey, do you remember whether you looked at this document at the time?
No.
Do you know why, or whether there's any reason why you didn't or wouldn't have looked at this document at the time?
I'm not aware of any specific reason.
Right. Do you accept that this is an important document because it sets out the specification for the design of the cladding system?
It appears to be, yeah.
Now, if we go to page 3 of this document, we can look at section 1. And again, let's see how far we go with this if you weren't familiar with it at the time. At the top of the page, it says, in the second sentence, all works shall be designed, supplied and constructed by the contractor. Were you aware at the time that in the case of Grenfell, Harley was the subcontractor engaged to design the building envelope?
Yeah, but with what I said before about productionisation.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand the qualification. In general terms, would it be fair to say that you knew that Ryden would be reliant on Harley's specialist knowledge as the specialist cladding subcontractor in respect of the design and installation of the facade?
Yes, as well as the architect.
Now let's look at page 4. And look at section 4. Perhaps we can actually go ahead to page 9. First of all, on page 9 it says, at section 6, design, and if you look at the third entry from the end, you can see that the contractor is expressly required to consider the need for effective fire barriers. Did you know that at the time? Did you know at the time that the cladding subcontractor was going to be responsible for the need for effective fire barriers, or to take that into account?
Yes.
You did. Can we look at page 11 and section 7? Overcladding, and there are two subsections there. There's subsection 7.1.13 and 7.1.14. 7.1.13 refers to compliance with the recommendations of the BR document Fire Performance of External Thermal Insulation for Walls of Multi-Storey Buildings, 2nd edition 2003, or in shorthand BRE 135. Were you aware yourself of the existence or contents of BR 135 referred to there?
I wasn't aware of that document at the time.
Were you aware that compliance of the system which Harley was responsible for had to comply as a matter of this contractual document with the terms of BR 135?
So as you said, in terms of this contractual document, I wasn't aware of that.
Looking at 7.1.14, the system shall not be a fire risk at any stage of the installation, nor shall it constitute a fire hazard after completion if for any reason the insulant becomes exposed. Again, were you aware that that was part of Harley's contractual obligation, that it had assumed to Ryden?
I mean, I was aware of the overall concept of that, but again, as not as a specific clause in the contract.
Right. Can we go to section 4 of this specification, which is on page 8? Just go back. We'll look at section 4, compliance with general standards. Were you aware that Harley had to comply with, and look at the first entry, all statutory instruments and then a little bit lower down, the Building Regulations 2000 and subsequent amendments, and then 3 up from the bottom, BRE digests and information papers. Were you aware, in your role as project manager, that Harley had to comply with those?
Maybe not, specifically as they're written, but in terms of following the building regulations, I think everyone knows
Right.
that.
And if you turn the page to section 5, specific standards of compliance, you can see at the very bottom there, the specific standards of compliance included, at the end of a long list, Centre for Walling and Cladding Technology, that should be C, WCT, Standards for Walls with Vertical Rain Screens 1998. Were you familiar with that standard?
At the time, I was aware of the CWCT, but I don't think I'd read that document.
And presumably you therefore were not aware that Harley owed a duty to Ryden to make sure that those standards or guidance was complied with.
As I said before, I mean, it's implied everywhere that the building regulations have to be followed, but in terms, as I said, in terms of specific laws in here, I wasn't aware of it.
At the time of your involvement in the Grenfell Tower project, had you heard of something called DOM2, Articles of Agreement and Subcontract Conditions?
I had not.
No.
No.
That's a no, is it? Right.
That's a no.
Would it follow from that answer that you were not aware that Harley's contract with Ryden incorporated the conditions of DOM2, Articles of Agreement and Subcontract Conditions?
No.
Right. Were you aware of a general obligation on Harley not to substitute materials or use substitute materials or products that were different from those that were included in the specification without the specific consent of Ryden?
Was I aware of the clause?
Were you aware of it in general?
In general.
Never mind whether it's in a clause or not. Were you aware in general that Harley wasn't allowed to substitute materials or products that were different from those that were included in the specification?
At the time, I wasn't aware of the clause as such, no.
No, you may not have been aware of the clause, but in general, were you aware of a general obligation? Let me put it differently to you. Were you aware that Harley had promised Ryden that there would be no change to materials that were set out in the specification unless Ryden consented to such a change?
In terms of a explicit awareness, no.
No. Were you aware that Harley had to tell Ryden if there were any discrepancies that it spotted between the design and the statutory requirements and the requirements of guidance?
In whose design? In our design, or
Any design. I'd say to any design. Design, whether or not done by Studio E.
I think I think if anyone had seen a problem, it would be pointed out.
Did you know that the terms of Ryden's contract with the TMO, the Design and Build JCT form contract, were also incorporated into the contract between Ryden and Harley, so that it was basically a back-to-back contract?
I was not aware of that.
Right. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to turn to a completely different topic now.
Well, that would probably be a good
I
moment
think
to
it
have a
would.
break, couldn't it?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. We'll have a break now, Mr. Bailey.
Awesome.
We're going to come back at 10 to 12, please.
Okay.
And let me remind you not to talk to anyone about your evidence or anything to do with it while you're out of the room.
Of course.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you go with the usher, please? 10 to 12, please.
Thank you.
Yes, would you ask Mr. Bailey to come back in, please? Thank you. All right, Mr. Bailey, ready to carry on?
I am.
Good, thank you. Yes, Mr. Bailey.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Bailey, I'd like to explore the topic of insulation at Grenfell with you now, if I can. Can I ask you to go, please, first to paragraph 26 of your witness statement on page 8? Now, you say there, 4 lines down from the top of the paragraph, the insulation was Celotex RS 5000, which was a rigid board type of insulation. Its appearance was of a yellow rigid foam with unbranded silver foil faces on the front and back, but not around the edges. Now, first, having shown you that, can we look at a contemporaneous document, CEL 409874, please? Now, you may not have seen this document before, or certainly not at the time. I'll tell you what it is. It's a Celotex Salesforce database entry dated the 10th of June 2014. And we need to blow it up a bit. But if you look at the document, it relates to Merritt House, as you can see from the right-hand side. And underneath Merritt House, it says Ben Bailey. Do you see that?
Yes.
Yes. And this particular task was assigned to someone called Mark Willoughby at Celotex. Was Mark Willoughby somebody familiar to you? Do you remember?
It's not a name that I remember.
Right. And the Celotex task type, if you look at the left-hand column, incoming call, activity type technical assistance, task topic call, due date 10th of June 2014. Just pausing there, that was at a time, I think, when you were working on the Merritt House, from what you told us earlier. Is that right?
That would have been, yes.
Yes. And underneath it says comments. Ben called to ask if we had an alternative to Kingspan K15. Project is over 18 metres, so could not help at this time. Needed product on site in 2 weeks. Let me know that they have just been awarded 2 new overclad projects in London in autumn. Once we have 18-metre fire test, inform Ben and team so that we can win spec. Do you remember telling Mr. Willoughby or anyone else at Celotex at that time that Harley had just been awarded 2 new overclad projects in London in the autumn?
As I say, Mark Willoughby is not a name I'm familiar with. The only person I can remember speaking to at Celotex is Jonathan Room.
Right.
Okay. And I can give you some more context to this, maybe. Jonathan was a fairly regular visitor to the office, asking these kind of questions about what jobs we're tendering for, what jobs we've got, obviously with a view to...
Well, in general, do you remember ringing Celotex in about June 2014 and telling them that you had won 2 new overclad projects in London?
I don't know.
Now, we can see from a later document that one of those projects was Grenfell Tower and the other was a project in Telford. Remember the project in Telford?
No, Telford's completely new to me.
Right. Do you remember whether Celotex told you, as we can see here from this contemporaneous document, that they would soon have a product that was available for use on buildings over 18 metres?
Yes.
You do remember that?
Well, I don't remember if it was at that time,
Right.
but it's...
Did Mr. Willoughby, or the person you spoke to at Celotex, as far as you can remember, mention FR 5000 at all?
No.
Did you know in June 2014 about Celotex FR 5000?
No.
did you understand that Celotex had no products that could, for insulation, that could be used above 18 metres?
At that point in time, yes.
You did, okay. Does that mean that at this point, turning away for a moment from the document and looking at June 2014, you were aware that there were restrictions on insulation products being used on buildings above 18 metres in height?
Yes.
You did know that. Now, you're asking, according to this document, if there's an alternative to Kingspan K15. Did you think that K15 was a product that could be used on buildings in excess of 18 metres in height?
Yes.
We'll come back to K15 later and explore that answer that you've given us in a bit more detail. But for the moment, can we stick with Celotex? Can we look, please, at another Celotex Salesforce entry, CEL 409875, please? And if we could just have that expanded a little bit more. We can see, again, this relates to Merit House. If we look at the right-hand side, and again, your name is referred to there. Do you see that? On the right-hand side,
Yes.
Merit House, name Ben Bailey. And again, it's assigned to Mark Willoughby, and this time the Celotex task type is a report, activity type rain screen contractor, task topic 18-metre fire test, due date 18th of July 2014. And the comments say, met Ben on the Merit House project to discuss current demands on site and future projects. Now, just pausing there, do you remember meeting Mark Willoughby on the Merit House site, or at all, to discuss
as
the
I said
project?
before, Mark Willoughby is not a name I'm familiar with.
Right.
As I said, my memories, my only dealings with someone at Celotex, especially meeting someone, is
Right. Well, do you remember having a meeting with anyone from Celotex on the Merit House project to discuss current demands on site and future projects at this time, so 18th or around the 18th of July 2014?
But yeah, before you've shown me this document, I had a memory of meeting Jonathan Broom on site at Merit House.
You do?
Yes.
Right. So you think it was Jonathan Room and not Mark Willoughby?
As I said before, Mark Willoughby is a name that I'm not familiar with. Jonathan Broom certainly am.
Now, it goes on to say, have had to use Kingspan K15 as we, at Celotex, do not currently have a product. Just pausing there, was it fair to say that you were using K15 on Merit House because Celotex did not have a product for use suitable over 18 metres?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Kingspan was specified on that job, and as I said, Jonathan was fairly regular around, and he was telling us that Celotex were looking to come out with a competing product. So I think his site visit, he was keeping me up to date with, where they were in, if they got the certificate or not. So I think that's why when he said they've had to use Kingspan K15, because their product wasn't on the market yet.
Right. Were you having these discussions with Mr. Room because you wanted to use Celotex products, or was there a problem on the Merit House site with using the K15 product?
I don't recall. It could be a supply issue. It could be a response from us to Jonathan telling us about the product and doing his sales pitch.
Right.
But I don't remember
Right.
this particular scenario.
You don't remember. Okay. Now, it looks from this, if we go on, that you said that you had new projects. It says, have two, I think it is, although it's misspelt, have two new projects that they are on the verge of winning to start later this year: Grenfell Tower, White City, Telford office. Do you remember telling Jonathan Room that you did have, or were about to win, those two projects to start later that year?
Well, it's certainly possible. I told him about Grenfell Tower, but Telford office is not a job that I remember being familiar with. It's not a job we've done. So.
Right. So you can't explain that. He goes on to say they have also taken on 2 more designers in the office. Do you remember telling Mr. Room that?
No.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your answer. I thought you were pausing. It turns out that it's me who is pausing. Just at this point, just talking about choices of products, do you remember a discussion inside Harley about whether you should go for the Grenfell Tower project and let a project called Karma go?
I wouldn't have been involved in those kind of discussions, so I don't remember.
Do you know anything about the Karma project?
I know it's in Wembley.
Right.
And I know who got the job eventually, but I don't know specifics about it.
All right. Now, going back to this, do you remember what else was discussed at the meeting with Jonathan Room, apart from what's written on this page here?
I don't know.
Right.
Well, I don't remember.
Can we then look at another document? This is CEL 409877. Now, this is another Celotex Salesforce entry. And again, it relates to Merritt House. And again, we see your name, Ben Bailey, there on the right-hand side. And again, it's been assigned to Mark Willoughby. Celotex Task Advice, Phone Advice. And again, task topic, 18 metres fire test. And this time the due date is 31st of August 2014. You see that? And the comments are, update Harley CW on 18-metre fire test to close 2 overclad projects raised by Ben Bailey on last call. Again, do you remember whether you rang Celotex or Celotex rang you? Do you remember?
I think it's likely Celotex rang me.
Right. And did you get well, what do you remember what you were told by Mr. Room about testing? Well, sorry, Celotex told you about testing.
I mean, as I was saying before, Jonathan was sort of saying that we're getting closer to the certificate being issued, and that, I think that's why he's referencing the next jobs, because that's when they're anticipating it to be ready.
Just to be clear, did you ever speak to anybody at Celotex other than Jonathan Room, do you think?
Not that I have a recollection of.
All right.
And as I said before, Jonathan Room was our point of contact.
Right. As a result of those discussions, is it fair to say that you were aware from about this point on that Celotex now had a solution for use above 18 metres, either available then or very shortly to be available?
That's what I was being told, yes.
Right. Did you expect them to be in touch as soon as it was available?
I don't know whether I expect it to be, but yeah, I think Jonathan was very keen.
Very keen, I see. Can I then just go back a little bit in time to earlier in the month, August 2014, and let's look together at CEL 401237. This is an email from Jonathan Room to Ben Sharman at Harley, subject Celotex RS5000, grain screen insulation launch. And it says, hi, Ben, good to speak to you again. That's Ben Sharman. Just pausing there, do you know what Ben Sharman's role within Harley was?
He was a designer.
He was a designer?
Yeah.
And was he a designer specifically on the Grenfell Tower project or just generally?
I'd worked with him previously on Merit House, and I don't remember the job he was working on at that time, but I don't think it was Grenfell.
Do you know why Jonathan Room would have sent this email to him specifically?
I don't know.
Did Ben Sharman work as a designer on the Grenfell House project at all? Grenfell Tower, I'm sorry, as opposed to Merit House.
Well, I think Ben was with us until probably the same point in time, but in 2015. He may well have done some early detail on it at the early days, but I'm not sure.
Right. It goes on. Good to speak to you. I have the pleasure of informing you, as of yesterday, we have now launched the first PIR board to successfully meet the performance criteria in BR 135 for insulated rain screen cladding systems, therefore acceptable for use in buildings above 18 metres in height. All capitalised initially. I would like to come into the office when everyone is around to present formally the new product. Do you recall any talk in the office or being told by Ben Sharman that Celotex had now launched a new PIR product to be able to be used above 18 metres in height?
I don't remember, like a round table meeting. But as I said before, Jonathan was in regularly, so he may well have introduced it to different people at different times.
Right. Do you remember when you first became aware that Celotex had launched a new PIR product suitable for use on buildings above 18 metres in height?
I don't remember when I became aware that it passed its tests, because I was aware of it before that point in time. So obviously, I don't remember at what point in time that I was made aware that it had passed its tests.
I see.
And was, they were saying it was acceptable for use.
Right. Do you remember whether Jonathan Room came into the Harley office to make a presentation of this product, this new product?
As I said, I don't remember.
Right. Can we look at the NBS specification for Grenfell Tower? It's SEA 50169, please. The version that's going to go up on the screen, as you can see, is actually dated the 30th of January 2014, but it's very similar to the edition that was sent out to tenderers on the 29th of November 2013. But it's looking at its first page. Do you think you read this when you first became involved? We discussed this earlier, but just looking at it now, did you read this when you first became involved?
The whole of the NBS specification.
Well, any part of it?
I've read the bits that were applicable to us. I think it was H92, I think L10, H40. There's bits that stick out to me, but it was basically the rain screen cladding, windows and doors, GRC curtain wall.
Right.
Because obviously the MBS specification is very long.
Now, at this point in time, and we're still talking about August 2014, did you look at those parts of the NBS specification that applied to Harley so far as concerns the Grenfell Tower project?
In August 2014?
Yes.
No.
You didn't. All right. When do you think you did first look at those parts of the NBS specification which were relevant to Harley's work?
Again, I don't have I couldn't give you a date, but it would be around the time of my first involvement, I would imagine.
Around your first involvement?
Oh, sorry, I'll clarify that. In the February, March sort of time frame.
I see. Okay, thank you. Yes. Now, can we look at page 73, and let's look at clause 776 together. This is thermal insulation, and we can see here at the top of the page there, under that heading, material 0 ODP rigid polyisocyanurate insulation board, BRE green guide rating A+, manufacturer Celotex, and then you can see just a little under that, product reference FR5000, aluminium foil faced both sides. Do you see that?
I do.
Now, when you first saw this, were you aware, based on your previous interactions with Celotex, that Celotex did not, at the time of this NBS specification, actually have a product that was suitable for use on buildings above 18 metres?
I don't remember being aware of particularly when the NBS was written. So I don't think that's something that I thought of at the time.
When you first saw the NBS specification, did it occur to you, did you ask yourself what that specification or what that product was and how it could be specified for use above 18 metres, given that Celotex did not have such a product prior to August 2014?
That's not something that occurred to me.
Did you realise when you did first see the parts of the NBS specification which applied to Harley, that that specification was not written as recently as a time after August 2014?
Yeah, as I said before, I didn't appreciate when the NBS was written.
Did you not look at this document carefully, product by product, to make sure that as project manager, you knew what products were going onto the building?
I think I had read this part because I did query the FR5000 part with the architect, because I'd been led to believe up to that point RS5000 was to be used.
You queried the FR5000 part with the architect. When did you do that?
As I say, I don't have a specific date for you, and I can't find an email where it was written down, but I have a recollection of informing the architect of that, and it would have been around the time that I first read this spec, because as I said to you before, I was under the impression RS5000 was to be used, and so when I saw FR5000 I queried it.
Do you remember who you queried it with?
I said the architect, so I think I mean Neil Crawford.
Do you remember what he said? Well, let me ask it this way. Do you remember what you asked him?
I mean, as I say, it's a conversation I had 5 years ago, but I think it would have been along the lines of, I'm expecting to see RS5000 here. It doesn't say that. You know, what do we do? And I think the response was, yeah, it is RS5000. And I took that as, as he said, it should be RS5000.
You say you can't remember an email. Did you send him an email, or was this conversation done face-to-face or over the telephone?
My recollection is a phone call.
What would have prompted the phone call? Do you remember?
Seeing that in the specification and my expectation of seeing RS5000.
I see. Did it occur to you that that FR5000 was not an insulation product suitable for use on a building over 18 metres?
Did it occur to me at the time?
Yes.
I can't say I read too much into it, I have to say.
Did it occur to you that even though, to your understanding, RS5000, which had, by the time you came into the project, been specified, or rather been adopted, might be suitable for use over 18 metres, FR5000 wasn't?
As I said, I don't remember that, triggering that sort of that sort of thought.
Let me try and put the question slightly differently, perhaps the same question. When you saw FR 5000 in the NBS specification, did an alarm bell go off which said not for use above 18 metres?
No, it was not a product I was familiar with. Probably thought at the time it was a typo.
So, just to be really clear about your investigation of this with Neil Crawford, as you say, were you asking him simply about the change in the name of the product, or did you ask him questions about its suitability?
It was about the name of the product.
I see. Was there any discussion at all between you and Mr. Crawford, to the best of your recollection, about the suitability of FR 5000 for use above 18 metres?
No.
Was there any discussion, to the best of your recollection, with him about the suitability of RS 5000 above 18 metres?
No, it was my belief that RS 5000 was suitable.
Now, can you remember specifically what it was that led you to think that RS 5000 had been adopted for Grenfell?
It was when I became involved in the job, it was what I was told. The U-value calculations that I'd seen that were produced prior to my involvement all said RS 5000 on them. And the calculations that Celotex had done and the conversations I'd had with Jonathan Room were all about RS 5000. FR 5000 was never mentioned to me.
And you say it was what I was told. Do you remember who told you that?
So in terms of something that I can definitely remember, it was the U-value calculations performed by Dan that said RS 5000 on them.
I see. So you took RS 5000 as something from the documents you read rather than conversations that you had?
As something I can point to. It's physical piece of evidence, yes.
Yes. Now, do you know who it was who ultimately made the decision to have RS 5000 on Grenfell Tower?
I believe it was the architect. Notwithstanding my belief that the FR 5000 listed there is a mistake. It should be RS 5000.
Now, you said a little earlier on, I think, that Neil Crawford told you that RS 5000, and tell me if this is me misunderstanding your evidence, but Neil Crawford told you that RS 5000 was the same as FR 5000. Have I got that right?
Did I say? I don't think I said that. I think they said they intended it to be RS 5000.
Right. Well, let me ask it differently. Did you understand that RS 5000 was a different product to FR 5000?
I can't remember what I knew then, but I'm aware now that it's the same product, but the RS 5000 had the certification.
Right. And was it your understanding that Dan Anketel-Jones had adopted RS 5000 when doing the U-value calculations, as opposed to FR 5000?
I don't know if Dan had adopted it in those terms. I think he was working on the same understanding. The product was always thought to be RS 5000.
Do you know how he came to the understanding that it should be RS 5000?
I don't know how he came to the understanding.
Right. So what we're really trying to get to the bottom of, Mr. Bailey, is who was it within Harley who actually made the decision that RS 5000 should be used? Can you help me?
It should be used. I don't know.
Did you yourself make any investigation as to how the change from FR 5000 to RS 5000 came about? You told us about your discussion with Mr. Crawford. Did you make any other investigation?
I may have spoken to Celotex, or Jonathan Room at Celotex, but that's not something I have a clear recollection of.
Right. Did you make any investigations as to why the change had occurred from FR 5000 to RS 5000?
In terms of investigation, other than my conversation I'd had with Neil, I don't remember.
Did you investigate, given that RS 5000 was a change of product from the product stipulated in the NBS specification, as we've seen, did you investigate whether the new product, RS 5000, had been checked for compliance by anybody?
I didn't personally check that he'd been checked for compliance. I haven't, have an expectation that that's the role the architect's performing.
Did you yourself, I think you've given me the answer, but just to be clear, when you came into your role as project manager in early 2015, did you take any steps yourself to make sure that RS 5000 had been selected after checks had been made for compliance with the building regulations and approved document B?
Yeah, I think that was part of flagging it up to Neil that, what I'm expecting to see on it, I would have expected to have been assessed, is actually what they mean by that. Does that make sense?
Given that he was an architect and you were not,
Yeah.
as I think we know, did you say to him, did you ask him, well, this is a new product, does it comply with the building regulations?
I don't think I would have said that explicitly. I would have said that explicitly. I think it was...
Did he say anything to you to lead you to believe that he was satisfied that RS 5000 was compliant with the building regulations?
I think he was quite laid back when I pointed this out to him. I think he, sort of to say when I say he sounded quite laid back about it, as in, yes, that's a typo. It would give me the belief or the expectation that in their minds they think it should be RS 5002 and that it would have been checked for compliance.
You say, yes, that's a typo. Did he say that?
He may have done.
Typo on what document?
The NBS.
But the NBS specification, as we've seen, is dated the 30th of January 2014,
Yeah.
8 months before RS 5000 was even launched. So how could that be right? How could it be a typo?
I'm misremembering the conversation then.
Right. Can you remember exactly what, or even generally, what Mr. Crawford did say when you raised the difference in specification with him?
I think generally that I was right in my expectation that I should be seeing RS 5000 on there.
Right. Anything else?
Not that I recall.
Right. Did you take any steps to correct the NBS specification?
I did not.
Did you take any steps to correct or change the Harley specification?
I did not.
I just want to examine Jonathan Room's visits to Harley with you. Can we look at paragraph 113 of your statement? This is on page 28. You say there, let's wait for it to come
So it's
up on
not
the screen.
yet.
paragraph 113, page 28.
This is my statement. Or?
This is. I'm so sorry. This is Mr. Ray Bailey's statement. I'll give you the reference again. It's HAR 3010184. And he says there, that we can go to the beginning of the paragraph. He says that RS 5000 was relatively new type of product. And then if you go over the page to page 29, still within paragraph 113, he says there, 7 lines up from the bottom of that paragraph, in addition, a representative of Celotex, Jonathan Room, also attended Harley's offices to talk with Harley staff about the benefits of the RS 5000 product, specifically for the Grenfell project. You see that?
Yes.
Do you remember any visits by Jonathan Room about the benefits of RS 5000 specifically for the Grenfell Tower project?
I don't recall.
Do you remember whether Celotex visited Harley House in order formally to launch the RS 5000 product, as the email from Jonathan Room to Ben Sharman showed might happen?
If there was a visit, I don't remember it. I may not have been there because I was more site-based at that period of time.
Do you remember in general terms why such meetings took place?
With Celotex specifically, or?
With Celotex?
I think, generally speaking, I think Jonathan will come in, he's a salesman. It would be to find out current jobs we're tendering for. He's there for information from us, I think.
Do you remember whether anybody ever took any notes of those meetings, either from Harley or from Celotex?
I'm unaware.
Right. Do you recall whether Harley were ever given any assurances by Celotex as to the suitability of use of RS 5000 on buildings above 18 metres?
I'm unsure.
Do you know why Jonathan Room was attending Harley's offices as opposed to Studio E's offices or Ryden's offices to discuss the RS 5000 product?
As I possibly alluded to earlier on, it's a sales visit. He's there for information.
Yes. It's a sales visit. He's there for information. I understand that. But my question is, why is he making a sales visit and giving information to Harley as opposed to Studio E or to Ryden?
I think what I'm saying is I don't think he possibly think his motivation is to give us knowledge of RS 5000. It's a reason for a visit, but the benefit he's getting from it is sales information. I think that's the point I'm trying to make. That why he'll be coming to us rather than an architect.
Isn't the reason that he's coming to Harley as a sales visit because Harley had at least a role to play, if not the most influential role to play, in the selection of RS 5000 as an insulation product on this project?
No.
No? Can you explain why else he didn't go to Studio E or Ryden but chose to come to Harley?
I think,
What's that?
other than what I've already said, they were aware that RS5000 had been specified on Grenfell Tower. So he's coming to the office to make us aware of that fact. I can't offer much more than that.
I'm not sure I understand that. You say they were aware that RS5000 had been specified on Grenfell Tower, but we know that it hadn't been specified on Grenfell Tower. We've seen the NBS specification, which says FR5000. So how could he be coming to the office to tell you that RS5000 had been specified, if in fact it hadn't?
He may have had conversations with the architect separately to us.
So really what I'm getting at is what would be the point of Celotex coming to Harley if Harley had if Harley had no control at all over the selection of the product?
Yeah, again, aside from what I've already said about it being an opportunity for a sales visit, it would be to offer their services as well, because they did some U-value calculations for us too, so that people in the office are generally aware about the product and things like that. But
Do you remember seeing any pink Celotex brochures being handed out at any of these meetings that you attended?
as I said, I don't remember attending any meetings with Celotex, but
Okay.
I know the brochures that you're referring.
You know the brochures.
Yeah.
Do you remember seeing pink Celotex brochures for RS5000 in the Harley office?
Yes,
You do. Did you read those brochures at the time?
I'm unsure.
Do you remember looking at the brochures and reading what they said about fire performance?
My memory from that is that it said it had Class O fire performance throughout.
Your memory is that it said it had Class 0 fire performance throughout. Is there a specific document you can put your finger on which said that?
Not right now, no.
No. Did you review the BBA certificate which related to RS5000?
I'm unsure.
Did you show Jonathan Room, or indeed anybody else at Celotex, any drawings in relation to the build-up of the cladding system at Grenfell Tower?
At the point in time, in terms of a site, as in terms of a meeting in the office, I don't think so. I'm aware we did send them some build-up drawings later on.
Did anybody from Celotex, to your knowledge, ever expressly confirm or approve the use of RS5000 together in combination with a Reynobond ACM panel rain screen?
Not to me explicitly.
To anybody?
I had the impression that Dan had insurances
How did you get that impression?
from Dan.
Can you remember what he told you?
I think he'd said that, these things have, it's been checked. So this product's okay.
Can you remember what he told you about the assurances he'd been given? Did he say what those assurances were?
Not specific assurances in terms of parts of the specific parts of the building regulations, but in terms of this is okay to be used here, was the sort of things he was saying to me.
Do you remember whether Celotex ever produced an assessment of the cladding system that you were proposing to use at Grenfell Tower, which would confirm that the insulation was safe to use with an ACM rain screen?
The only ones I saw were U-value calculations from Celotex.
Right. Can we look at CEL 3011960, please? This is an email dated the 27th of August 2014 from Jonathan Room to Daniel Anketel-Jones. Now, you're not copied in on it, so you may not have seen it at the time. But we can see there that there's an attachment, rain screen zip. And in the second line of the email, Mr. Room says, for now, here is all of the info that I have on the RS5000 rain screen product for use over 18 meters. And then let's look at the zip file. It included a number of things. Let's see if any of them are familiar to you. And before I show you these, were you aware of this email, or at least in general terms, at this time?
I don't think so.
Let's look at the Celotex product comparison sheet to see if this rings a bell with you. It's CEL 707. Celotex product comparison. And there's a list of proposed benefits down the right-hand side. Best in class PIR solutions with Celotex FR5000, etc. Is this document something you saw at the time, do you think?
No.
No. Let's look at another one. CEL 6012, please. This is the rain screen cladding compliance guide when specifying Celotex RS5000 in buildings above 18 metres. Is this something that you think you saw at the time?
I'm unsure.
Okay, you're unsure. If we turn the page to the next page, just to see if this prompts a recollection, does that look familiar to you? The two types of construction methods set out there?
Those kind of sections through the insulation are pretty common through other brochures I've seen.
Right.
So it doesn't stand out to me as something that.
Right. Looking at the bottom of the page, do you remember seeing what's under the heading there? Approved document B2, buildings with a story height greater than 18 metres have additional requirements under the National Building Regulations. And then it refers to section 12.5, external wall construction, and sets out, well, actually quotes from ADB. Do you remember seeing a Celotex document which does that, like this?
No.
No. Let's try one more document. CEL 6013, please. This is the rain screen cladding specification guide. Does that look familiar to you from your recollection at the time?
No.
No. Okay. Well, I don't think I need to show you the contents of that. Can we look back then at the document I've just shown you, which is the compliance guide, CEL 6012. And I'd like you to go to, please, to page 1 again, or we're on page 1, page 2. And we saw that a moment ago, and the quotation from section 12.5. Can we look at the next page, please? That's entitled BR135, and there are some performance criteria set out there. Do you remember seeing something like that at the time?
Well, it's certainly something I've seen since, but
Right.
at the time I don't think so.
Do you remember seeing a document which told you that the classification only applied to the system as tested and detailed in the classification report? As it says on the right-hand side in the second paragraph there.
That's not something I was aware of.
Right. Not something you were aware of. Were you aware in general terms that RS 5000 would only comply with approved document B to the building regulations where it was used above 18 metres, if it was used as part of a cladding system that was exactly the same as the one the subject of the test?
No.
Can we then turn to your taking over in respect of RS 5000 and some specific involvement in February 2015? CEL 6024, please. This is an email run on the 11th of February 2015 And I'd like to start at page 3, please. On page 3, or at the bottom of page 2, actually, we go to an email of the 11th of February from Jonathan Room to you. Hi, Ben. Looking back through my records, it seems that Dan had performed an initial calc using his build desk software, U-value. He was going to send me the drawings once finished with Trinity back in November. Let me have the final construction drawings showing the different build-ups, and I will get these modelled for you. Now, this was relatively near the start of your full involvement with the project, wasn't it, Grenfell Tower?
Yes.
Yes. Is it fair to say, just looking at this, and we can look at the response as well, but you were taking over from Daniel Anketel-Jones in liaising with Celotex in respect of RS 5000 from about this time?
Yes.
Why were you taking over from him in that liaison, do you remember?
I think it was one of the first things that Rob asked me to sort of pick up and start running with, I think. And part of that is getting back in touch with Celotex, I think. And, you know, getting the ball rolling, I think.
Right. Now, if we go to page 1 and look at the second email down on that page, please. That says, it's from you, and it's to Jonathan Room, same day, 11th of February. Hi, Jonathan. You say, the drawings are in a Dropbox. Does this link work for you? So is it right that when you sent Mr. Room the drawings, that was expressly for him to check the U-value calculations?
So could you just go back to the previous page?
Yes, of course. If you go back to page 2, please.
It doesn't say explicitly, but it's probably implied, yeah.
Yeah. So you didn't ask him to review the drawings and consider whether the entire system that was proposed for Grenfell was safe from a fire perspective?
It doesn't say that.
To your knowledge, did Mr. Room ever conduct any assessment of the cladding system at Grenfell Tower as a whole and confirm to you that RS 5000 was safe to use in that application?
I think from the reply we got to this wasn't with that in mind.
No, and if we go to the top of the, well, actually, we can look at CEL 6025. I think we can see the response from Mr. Room shortly after this. This is on the same day, 11th of February, and he says, I've had our technical team look at the numbers for Grenfell Tower, and then he talks about dimensions and U-values there. We don't need the details of that. Is it fair to say that at this stage, 11th of February 2015, the specific width of the Celotex product was still under consideration in order to work out the appropriate U-values?
Yes.
Did the drawings you sent, Mr. Room, show what other elements of the proposed cladding system were comprised of? Do you remember that?
As I said, it's a Dropbox link. We kept the work. We kept the current drawings for the job in a Dropbox, so I may be sending him a link to that rather than attaching however many attachments to an email. But I don't specifically remember what is in that link.
Right. Now, shortly after this, in March 2015, I think you began talking to Jill Walker at SIG to obtain a quotation for the supply of RS 5000. Do you remember that?
What was the date again, sorry?
It's in March.
Yes.
Yes. Can I look at a document with you? CEL 6031, please. Now, this is an email from Jonathan Room to you. We look at page 1, second email down, on the 16th of March 2015, and he says in the second paragraph, well, he says in the first paragraph, the 80 millimetres are a standard size, so should be easy enough to get hold of. And then he writes, do you know which SIG branch that you're using and who you speak to? It'll then be easier for me to make sure that the pricing and supply chain is looked after for you. Would it be fair to say, looking at that, Mr. Bailey, that Celotex were going to organise a discount or a deal on the pricing to make sure that Harley were, as he puts it, looked after?
No.
Had Mr. Room promised you a discount on the Celotex RS5000?
No.
Now, the quotation from SIG was provided on the 17th of March 2015, the next day, by Jill Walker. And we can go to that. The email is at CEL6032. We don't need that. I just want to show you the quotation itself. CEL6035, please. There's the quotation, and this is to you, or to Harley, and it's for your attention. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Dated the 17th of March 2015, and you can see that there's a supply and delivery only of RS5000 specials, 660 each in quantity. The price is £132.19p per each, and then there's a discount of minus 47.50%. 47.5%, and the total price of £45,803 odd. Now that's a hefty discount, isn't it? It's almost half price.
I mean, it would. I can see why it would appear to be a large discount.
Well, it's almost half price, isn't it?
I don't think it's an unusual discount, though.
All right. Was this discount agreed between you and Mr. Room?
No.
Was it agreed between you and SIG?
No.
Can you explain how the discount was arrived at?
I don't have any first-hand knowledge of the discussion that SIG and Celotex would have had between them, because between themselves. But in terms of how do we arrive at a discount such as that, I think the answer is you order lots of it, and it's not unusual in my experience of ordering stuff, not just from SIG, from other suppliers, that large orders get a discount without even asking.
So you weren't surprised to see a discount of this magnitude?
Not at all. We had another quotation from SIG for Kingspan K15, and that, whilst the discount wasn't, the discount was less, there was still a discount for it that wasn't asked for.
Did the discount originate with Celotex or with SIG? Do you know?
I think SIG are the people giving the discount. I think Jonathan alludes in an email that I've seen to, the previous email, he says sort out supply. So I think there's a few things to unpack from this. Sort out supply, because in this email, in this quotation, they're actually quoting for a thickness that they're going to make specially for us, because the 160mm thickness wasn't a stock size. So I think that's the supply part, and then the to use his term, look after us on pricing. I think it's an unfortunate phrase. We have a separate email from SIG for the Kingspan, as I said, and I think what they're trying to demonstrate is that, knowing that their product's going to be used on the job, that they are not taking advantage of that fact and financially taking advantage by having a higher price. That's my interpretation.
Well, let's see if I can explore that a little bit more closely. Can we look at CEL 6034, please? This is an email from Jill Walker, same day, 17th of March 2015, to Jonathan Room. And below that, there's an email that says, as promised, also the same day. And if you scroll down, you can see what she's doing is forwarding to Jonathan Room the quotation that she had sent to you, offering the discount. Do you know why she did that or might have done that?
I don't know.
It looks on the face of this document that Jill Walker at SIG was offering the discount and then telling Celotex that she'd done that. Would that correspond with your recollection about the way things were done?
As I said, I have no knowledge of their discussions.
No.
That didn't involve us. Or didn't involve me, sorry.
Was the fact that you could get discounts of this order of magnitude something that influenced the choice of RS5000 as the insulation product for Grenfell Tower?
No.
Can I ask you to look at CEL 50467, please? This is a Celotex record of a meeting. I'm afraid it's in very small print, and we will have to do our best. And I'd like you to look at two parts of this document. First of all, the entry on the very far left-hand side at the top, which gives the date. And it's the 8th of April, 2015. And I'm not sure we can do better than this, but it looks as if there was a meeting between you and someone at Celotex. And the owner of this entry appears to be somebody called Kirsty Crossley. Does that name ring a bell with you?
No.
Right. And then the note in the middle. Oh, that's much better. Thank you. The note in the middle under comments. Met Ben in the office to discuss progress on Grenfell Tower. Rydens are the MC, and although they have started to take RS, they have not actually started installing. Discussed the potential to use as a case study, and Ben is happy. Thinks that Rydens will get on board also. Arranged to visit site the next time in area. Now, Kirsty Crossley created this entry, and it's said to be the account number, but you've never heard of her. Assuming that, in fact, this relates to Jonathan Room as the only person, according to your recollection, you ever met from Celotex. Do you remember meeting Mr. Room at this time, 8th of April 2015, to discuss the Grenfell Tower project as the comments identify?
I mean, I don't remember that meeting or that being discussed particularly, but if we're assuming it's Jonathan, if that's what he says, then...
Do you remember one or other of you saying or discussing the potential to use as a case study, and Ben is happy? Did Mr. Room say to you that they wanted to use Grenfell Tower as a case study for RS5000?
I'm not... I don't recall that specific discussion at that time.
Do you remember anything about this discussion?
This particular discussion, no, it's not, I don't recall this.
In general terms, do you have any recollection of any discussions with Celotex, the gist of which was that Grenfell Tower would be a case study for RS5000?
Yes.
You do remember?
Yes.
And would April 2015 be around about the time that you remember you had those discussions?
No.
And what does case study mean in that context?
What do I mean by what a case study is?
No. What did you understand that Grenfell Tower being a case study for RS5000 would involve? Or what did it mean?
I suppose being an insulation supplier, they might be interested in what U value was achieved with their product on a building.
Did you get the impression that Grenfell Tower was, as it were, a guinea pig for RS5000?
That's not a thought that crossed my mind.
So, but you say you agree that there was a discussion about it being used as a case study.
There's correspondence later in the year, whilst it's not directly from Celotex.
Right.
about a case study, yes.
Okay. And do you recall whether Grenfell Tower was the first high-rise project, to your knowledge, on which RS 5000 had been used?
Whether or not I knew it was the first or not, I was aware it was one of the
Right.
I'll rephrase that. It hadn't been used widely before.
Right. Do you know whether it had been used at all before?
I'm unsure.
Do you know why Mr. Room was interested in having Celotex case studied at Grenfell?
I don't know why he was interested in that in particular, no.
All right. Can we look at another document? It's CEL 6039, please. This is an appointment note dated the 17th of April 2015 for Mr. Room, showing a diarised meeting with you on the 7th of May 2015 to, as he says, review installation of RS on Grenfell Tower, potential case study. Do you remember that meeting?
As I said before, specifically, no. So Jonathan was at the office quite a lot.
Would the meeting have been on site or at Harley's offices or at Celotex? Do you remember?
I don't know, actually. I note the location here says Grenfell Tower, but I don't remember meeting Jonathan on site ever.
And would it be normal for a manufacturer such as Celotex to visit a site installation?
All I can say for that is a Kingspan rep didn't visit me on site at Merritt House when we used the Kingspan product on the previous job.
Didn't?
Did not.
No. So far as your experience was concerned, this was a first, in the sense that here was a...
In my experience of one, yes.
In your experience of one, yes, I understand. And do you remember what was discussed at that meeting?
No. I don't remember this meeting. As I said, I don't remember meeting Jonathan at
No.
site.
Do you remember what stage of the installation the project had reached at that point, so mid-April 15?
There would certainly be insulation on the wall.
Right. Had any rain screen gone up yet?
When you say rain screen,
I mean
panels,
ACM panels, yes.
I think it's unlikely. I don't think we'd have had them on site at that time.
Did Mr. Room see anything at site, which when he visited, that would have told him that ACM cladding was being used on the Grenfell Tower project along with Celotex RS 5000?
If it was that date, it's unlikely.
It looks as if the projected date for the meeting was the 7th of May 2015.
Yes.
So as at the 7th of May 2015, as opposed to the 17th of April, you think it's unlikely that there would have been any ACM on site?
That's my memory,
Yes.
as it is now, yeah.
Was there any discussion at all between you about how RS 5000 would interact with ACM?
Not that I recall.
Right. Mr. Chairman, we're going to turn to a different topic in a moment. I've just got one more document to show the witness. It might be more convenient to do that now before we switch to it.
Yes, very well.
Thank you. CEL 50467, please. Now, this is, again, another Celotex Salesforce entry document, and again, it's, I'm afraid, very small, and if we could have it blown up again. This is the second entry down this time. And it's a 20th of May 2015 date point. And I'm going to wait till it becomes clearer. If we can just bring that into focus. Thank you. And it says, Kirsty Crossley again, site visit, and again, it's Grenfell, and it says product starting to be installed. Mark wanted to know if we could offer any letter detailing that Harley are an approved installer of Celotex products. Reason being is that he has been asked by the MC Rydens, who in turn have been asked by Kensington and Chelsea councillors, they wish to apply for drawing down money from an eco fund. My question is, were you involved in any discussions as to whether the refurbishment could obtain eco or grant funding of any kind?
No discussions about eco funding or grants, no.
Did you yourself consider, or to your knowledge anybody else at Harley consider at this stage, whether another insulation product should be or could be used which would attract grant funding?
Not that I was aware of at the time, no.
Were you aware at the time of any discussions involving the potential use of rock wool?
I wasn't aware of that at the time.
Right. Mr. Chairman, that may be a convenient moment.
It's a good point. Yes, very well, thank you. Well, we're going to have a break now, Mr. Bailey, so we can all get some lunch. We'll resume at 2:05, please.
Okay.
And no talking to anyone about your evidence or anything to do with it when they're out of the room, please.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. 2:05, please. Thank you.